Good. All right, I'm Marce. Unfortunately, Tom Stracener had an asthma attack on our way over and has gone to the hospital. So ultimately, Tom won't be making it. He'll just be here in spirit, and hopefully is getting some help. So just going right along, this is reverse benchmarking for web application security scanners. This is basically accumulates research from 2 years. Tom and I originally released this research at DEF CON in 2007. Anybody actually go see that presentation? Don't think so. Oh, you were there? Which scanner company do you work for? Wow. Well, I certainly appreciate it. I'd like to hear your thoughts afterwards between the two. So just as a quick agenda, we're going to just cover what we call the Open Reverse Benchmarking Project, just basically a website we put up to host some of this content and potentially facilitate. Then I'm going to have a meaningful quote and, cover some other stuff, but speeding right along. This quote, I think, for me, it just encapsulates kind of the pursuit of security in some ways, of how, you're looking for the truth of, hey, is this vulnerability there or not? And a lot of times you spend a lot of time going over these grains and these pieces and trying to pick it apart and find, the truth of the matter. Is the vulnerability really there? Is it exploitable? That kind of thing. So being a philosophy major as an undergrad, I like to throw stuff like this in. So ultimately, the ORB project, like to talk about, this is something we put together to potentially promote the concept of reverse benchmarking, which I will talk about in more detail. And if you do care to get involved, you can contact Tom Stracener at strace@gmail. Tom and I are really the only active members now, so there's plenty of room to get in. Get in while it's hot. Ultimately, web application scanners have come from humble beginnings and have grown a lot and become really sophisticated applications with advanced GUIs. And this is just some of the kind of observations that we've come up with. But ultimately, as they've developed, their signature bases haven't necessarily stayed abreast with the increases in web technology, on the other side, the server side, but their GUIs have, increased in size. Cover some more of these in the meat of the presentation. One of the most important aspects of web application scanners is picking which one you want. There's multiple commercial options out there, and there's also some open source options that do give some features that are very nice. So people when they're looking at web application scanners and they're trying to get an idea of which one to pick, they look at different criteria. There's, the functionality, what, type of functionality does it give you? Is it a black box scanner? Is it a white box scanner? And then, ergonomics and usability, performance, feature sets. But the last one is what we're going to focus on with this research, or what we have focused on is, what we think is the most important part of the scanners is how well they actually detect vulnerabilities they're, supposed to, their main purpose for doing this. Which begs the question of why care about false positives? Why are false positives, so important? In my experience, ultimately I didn't really introduce myself. I work for a large bank that has been buying other banks and mortgage companies and stuff. And so we have a lot of web applications that need to be tested. Last year alone, I tested 60-something applications. And a lot of that time was just going over the data that I got from the scanners and picking out false positives from, the true results. And so a lot of time is spent not just as individual people doing the work, but also for organizations, because ultimately you have to design a process and come up with ways to deal with the false positives. Because, say you have, one scanning project that you use to scan your DMZ and look for, stuff in on the internet, and then you use another standalone product to search for one-offs when you're doing the testing and development. So the way you design the process and when you do, validation of results, or even if you do validation of results, it costs organizations, time, money, motivation, and, as I say, political capital, because ultimately the political costs, if you go to a development group and you assert that, hey, you have this vulnerability in your app, and it comes to find out, no, it's not actually there. You've potentially burned the bridge, wasted their, expensive, time, and just undermine your own credibility. So the next time you go to them with, a potentially critical app, they're not going to, treat that with the type of urgency you would like them to. So making sure that you when you go to people, having your information in a row, all your ducks in a row as far as vulnerabilities are concerned, keeps that potential conflict from happening, and allows you to establish credibility with the people you do business with. And also it just generally undermines productivity, and ultimately productivity is a very important thing, especially for management. I mean, we constantly hear management is being, tasked to, do more with less. Have 10%, efficiency gains for a year. With management by objectives, you usually have stuff like that. So, how do you do that if you're constantly having to validate results? There's also, like, when you're talking about pen testers and web application assessment people, and I'm sure each of y'all in there, we're all, knowledge workers, and for us being motivated and to do the job and do the quality that the job requires, definitely is an important factor. And so just the quote here, I'm sure all of you've seen Office Space, I think is very funny. And I mean, it is important that you can only get so much work out of a resource if they're not on board, if they're not on the ship. And so I think, having that respect and looking, at the motivation of assets and how you design a process, and, if you have, one person always doing the validation of false positives, you're probably going to burn them out because it's really intensive, and it just annoys, people that, the vendors hadn't sufficiently QA'd their signature base, and now you have to do it. So ultimately, being at the tail end of a bad process, can certainly undermine motivation and make it more hard for management to maintain their goals and achieve those types of performance returns they're looking for. Now I'm proceeding to just benchmarking concepts in general. When you're trying, reverse benchmarking for us is the flip side to what we call positive benchmarking. So positive benchmarking is where you look at something and you look to see what it does well. So it identifies, this right. And so you look at various targets, that the vulnerability is there, and you go out and you say, hey, this one identified this. Yes, it's a check play. And so you're seeing what things do well. With reverse benchmarking, you're looking at what it does badly. So in other areas of life, reverse benchmarking is used to look at structural integrity.